Hello, everyone. This is Carolyn reading to you from the New Bedford Light on Tuesday, January 14th. We'll start today with our top news story. Immigrants fear police involvement in Trump deportation arrests, but state law bans it. If Trump carries out mass deportations, local chiefs of police and county sheriffs say they won't round people up or hold them for immigration enforcement. This story is by Arthur Hirsch. President-elect Donald Trump likely doesn't realize it, but when he talks about mass deportations, he conjures frightening images for members of New Bedford's immigrant community. Some were there or know people who were or have heard stories about the bitter cold March 6, 2007, when federal agents descended on a factory in the South End. Helena da Silva Hughes, who was executive director of the Immigrants Assistance Center then and is president now, says she remembers watching it all from a window of a New Bedford Police Command trailer, where she sought shelter from single-digit temperatures. Dozens of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents moved in and out of the four-story brick Michael Bianco Incorporated factory on West Rodney French Boulevard, bringing out one person after another to be escorted onto white buses and driven off. They must have filled 5 or 6 buses with people who were making backpacks and belts for the U.S. military at minimum wage or less, Da Silva Hughes recalled. ICE rounded up 361 workers for being in the country illegally. The move created turmoil in dozens of families and left emotional imprints that last to this day, including lingering suspicions about police. New Bedford officers were only handling traffic control that day, not going into the factory or making arrests. But that point may not reassure immigrant community members, Hughes said. All they know is they saw New Bedford police, Da Silva Hughes said. They looked at the state police escorting people into the buses. They saw them all working together. In Massachusetts, public officials began to draw lines between federal, state, and local roles in immigration enforcement very soon after Trump was elected on November 5th for a second term. For months, he has talked about deporting millions, starting with people who have criminal records. 2 days after the election, Governor Maura Healey told an interviewer that the state police would, quote, absolutely not, end quote, take part in deportations. In the weeks since then, local chiefs of police and county sheriffs have said they would not round people up or hold them for immigration enforcement, if only because state law gives them no authority to do so. Early this month, the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association released a 2-page legal advisory making clear that under state law established in a 2017 ruling by the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, the local authorities can play the role local authorities can play in detaining people for immigration enforcement is simply none. The statement summarized the court opinion and key terms, making clear that local authorities, including police and sheriff's officials, do not have the power to arrest people for federal immigration enforcement. The advisory noted that under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the federal government cannot compel states to enforce federal regulatory programs, including immigration enforcement. However, state law does not ban all cooperation with immigration enforcement. Bristol County Sheriff Paul Heroux and New Bedford Police Chief Paul Oliveira both say they are willing to provide information to ICE if requested. And Oliveira says he won't prevent police officers from volunteering information to ICE. Exceptions, ICE agreements. The exception not mentioned in the police chief's advisory would be those agencies holding formal agreements to work with ICE. At the moment, according to the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, 2 agencies in the state have such agreements: the State Department of Correction and the Plymouth County Sheriff's Office. The Department of Correction has a so-called 287G agreement that allows its officials to work under ICE supervision on immigration enforcement, including making arrests. The Plymouth County Sheriff's Office has a service agreement to house immigration detainees at the Jail and Correctional Center in Plymouth. Plymouth County Sheriff Joseph D. McDonald, Jr. said his agency this fall renewed the agreement through September 2029. He said he did not consider dropping it. "It's something I believe enhances public safety," he said. "It's a duty I have to the community." A sheriff's public information officer said that the Plymouth County Correctional Facility's inmate population changes daily, but in January there were 407 ICE detainees out of 897 people there. Along with people in civil detention for immigration proceedings, the facility, which can accommodate up to 1,140 men, also houses men serving sentences and in pretrial detention on state criminal charges, and men detained for the U.S. Marshals Service. The Bristol County Sheriff's Office had both types of agreements with ICE until 2021, when the Biden administration severed the agreements. That move came after an uprising at the ICE Detention Center in North Dartmouth in May 2020. A report by the state attorney general found that officers under then-Sheriff Thomas M. Hodgson, an outspoken Trump supporter who considered immigration enforcement a key part of his work, used excessive force and violated the civil rights of detainees. Hodgson backed his officers and dismissed the report as politically motivated. In his successful 2022 campaign against Hodgson, Sheriff Paul Heroux said he would not pursue immigration enforcement activity. He's standing by that position. The former Immigration Detention Center at the Bristol County Jail and House of Corrections complex in North Dartmouth has been renovated recently opened as a training academy and offices. In a media gathering for the opening in November, Heroux told reporters that if ICE asks for information on people in custody, he would provide it, but that's all. The federal government has an important job to do, Heroux told reporters at the training center, but we're not going to do their job for them. Barnstable County Sheriff Donna Buckley also elected in 2022, took a similar position during her campaign against Republican State Representative Timothy R. Whalen. In her first official act in office, the Democrat severed the 287G contract her agency had with ICE. Immigration enforcement is not the work of the sheriff's office, Buckley said in a recent interview. It was more of a political statement than an effort at public safety. It caused people unnecessarily to live in fear. ACLU, Trump calling for blatantly illegal actions. While it's clear that most local authorities in Massachusetts have no role arresting or holding immigration detainees, other questions about how state and local agencies will respond to immigration enforcement are more murky or may have to be settled in court. Daniel McFadden, a managing attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, said it's too early to say how the new Trump administration will try to use local resources in immigration enforcement. Part of the complication, McFadden said, is that many actions Trump suggested during the campaign would be blatantly illegal. He mentioned Trump's call for invoking the Alien Enemies Act, a 1798 law giving the president authority to detain non-citizens, and his support for revoking birthright citizenship. McFadden said the Alien Enemies Act applies only when the country is in a declared war or under invasion. Birthright citizenship is established by the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. McFadden also said Trump would be breaking the law if he were to follow through on his stated support for using the military to enforce immigration law. This point is more complicated. While the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 bars the federal government from using the military to enforce federal policies, there are exceptions. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, the federal law allows federal troops, including federalized National Guard, to assist in law enforcement, including providing equipment, but not performing basic law enforcement. Federal law also allows the president to ask, but not require, that governors deploy their state's National Guard to perform certain federal missions free from the restrictions of the Posse Comitatus Act. If governors do not comply, it's possible that the president could still activate state National Guard troops. Some legal scholars argue that he could use the Insurrection Act to do this. Healy has unequivocally opposed using state police for immigration enforcement, but has not taken a public stand on using the state National Guard for this purpose. Her press office did not respond to requests for comment. Caught between cooperation community. New Bedford Police Chief Paul Oliveira said some aspects of working with ICE are a matter of cooperation with another law enforcement agency. That includes providing information if ICE asks for it. If they reached out as a federal partner asking, "What's this guy's last known address?" I'm not going to take a stance that we won't cooperate with a federal law enforcement agency, Oliveira said. He said he would not object to his officers volunteering information if they thought ICE would need it. I'm not going to put a directive out and say, don't reach out to ICE, Oliveira said. At the same time, Oliveira said he wants to sustain what he and De Silva Hughes both say is a good relationship between city police and the city's immigrant community. De Silva Hughes, who has been with the IAC since 1984, said the organization has worked with a number of police chiefs, but Oliveira has made the most robust effort to connect with the Spanish-speaking community. She said Oliveira has attended church with IAC advocates, hired bilingual officers, and attended community meetings. He testified in favor of a state law adopted last year, allowing residents to apply for a driver's license, regardless of their immigration status. In early December, both Oliveira and Heroux visited the IAC in the South End to deliver presentations on their role in federal immigration enforcement. De Silva Hughes said 10 to 20 people attended and did not ask many questions. She said she expects both officials to be back to discuss immigration enforcement. It's important that the community is being protected, De Silva Hughes said. Our fear is that all this work we've done with the police is going to go away if Trump conducts the deportation program he has described. Oliveira is mostly reserving comment now, as the campaign rhetoric has not yet met the complicated legal and political realities of implementing mass deportations. McFadden of the ACLU said the civil proceedings of a deportation can take months to more than a year. The cost of the expansive program Trump has described has been estimated at tens or even hundreds of billions a year. Our next local news story today is entitled, Police Shut Down Morna Lounge and Grill After Fatal Shooting. Police said the Acushnet Avenue restaurant and bar, where officers have been called many times, would be shut down indefinitely. This story is by Arthur Hirsch. New Bedford police shut down a restaurant and bar in the North End on Monday, hours after a 19-year-old man appeared in 3rd District Court to face charges that he shot and killed a man and wounded 2 women inside the place on Saturday morning. Police said the Morna Lounge and Grill at Acushnet Avenue near the corner of Earl Street, where officers have been called many times for reports of unruly crowds serving after business hours and violence inside and just outside the restaurant, would be shut down indefinitely. In a release posted late Monday afternoon, Police Chief Paul Oliveira cited his authority under state law to order the owner, Mateus Jose Barbosa, to immediately close the business on an emergency basis in the interest of public safety. The release said the police hand-delivered the shutdown order in a letter to Barbosa, who, according to business records, is based in East Bridgewater. Oliveira cited a history of trouble at the restaurant and the Saturday shootings. In a call placed to a number listed for Barbosa in a New Bedford a call placed to a number listed for Barbosa in a New Bedford Licensing Board document was not returned. The Bristol County District Attorney's Office, heading the homicide investigation, also involving New Bedford and State Police, reported that Danielson Varela of New Bedford was arrested Sunday night and charged in the shootings that took place at about 1 a.m. Saturday inside 1621 Acushnet Avenue. The DA's office identified the man killed as 27-year-old Cristiano Macedo of New Bedford. The names of the injured woman have not been released. Macedo was pronounced dead at St. Luke's Hospital, where the women were treated for their injuries. 3rd District Court records show that Varela appeared before Judge Sabine Coyne on Monday, charged with first-degree murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, carrying a loaded firearm, and 2 counts of assault and battery with a firearm. Varela was being held without bail at the Bristol County Jail and House of Correction in North Dartmouth, pending a probable cause hearing scheduled on February 10th, court records show. According to court records, he was charged in 2 cases last year: malicious destruction of property at a home in the South End, and firing a gun outside a convenience store on Brock Avenue. Both cases were dismissed. The Morna Lounge opened in the middle of the pandemic by 2 brothers hoping to offer a place for Cape Verdean food and music. Trouble in and around the lounge started months after it opened in March 2021, according to the police statement and records of the New Bedford Licensing Board. Our next story today is entitled "No Collusion in Rochester School Committee Races." A state investigation did not find any evidence of inappropriate coordination between an independent fundraising group and local candidates. This story is by Colin Hogan. An investigation by the state's Office of Campaign and Political Finance did not find any evidence of inappropriate coordination between an independent fundraising group and local candidates in Rochester, Marion, and Mattapoisett, an area known as the Tri-Town. The state office did find several instances of unreported or misreported campaign finances, but did not recommend any fines or penalties after those documents were corrected. An infusion of cash from an independent expenditure political action committee, the local equivalent of a super political action committee, also known as an IEPAC, supported several school committee and select board candidates during the Tri-Town's last municipal election in 2023. Joe Perez and Ann Fernandez won races for local school committees, and Adam Murphy won a select board seat in Rochester. Greg Hardy, another candidate supported by the IEPAC, lost a race for local school committee. All of those candidates were supported by Rochester Citizens for Responsible Government, IEPAC, by Jacqueline Eckert, a fundraising committee created by a Rochester resident. The Office of Campaign and Finance Committee received several complaints, according to recently released findings, that claimed Eckert had coordinated with the political candidates she was supporting, which would have violated campaign finance laws. The complaints mostly focused on a political gathering Eckert held at her home to support the candidates. 2 weeks later, Eckert formed the IEPAC that raised tens of thousands of dollars on behalf of these same candidates. Our next story today is in environmental news. South Coast towns confront PFAS pollution in drinking water. Water suppliers are concerned that the cost to remediate the so-called forever chemicals could be millions of dollars. This story is by Adam Goldstein. This past spring, the Environmental Protection Agency announced new drinking water standards to limit forever chemicals linked to birth defects and cancers. In 2025, 9 public water systems in Westport, Dartmouth, and parts of Wareham will be looking into addressing PFAS contamination in their water. Testing shows levels of those chemicals, which can be found in myriad products like non-stick pans and mascara, may be above the new EPA standards. Water suppliers say the new regulations are strict, and ratepayers should know solutions may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions in some cases. Westport faces the South Coast's biggest challenge from PFAS. Contamination is widespread there, but because the town lacks a large public water system, it will be hard to find a common solution. State environmental regulators do not expect New Bedford to be affected by the EPA regulations. Many Massachusetts health and environmental authorities support these new regulations. They say the drinking water rules will protect millions of people nationwide from harmful exposure. We are going to have to address the contamination that's already out there, said Laurel Shader, a senior scientist at the Newton-based Silent Spring Institute. But water suppliers are concerned that the cost to remediate PFAS will excessively burden ratepayers. Roughly 180 public water systems across the state have tested for levels of PFAS contamination above EPA limits at least once in the last 5 years. They may have to invest in treatment. It needs to be a shared expense, said Jennifer Peterson, the executive director of the Massachusetts Waterworks Association. This has been Carolyn reading to you from the New Bedford Light on Tuesday, January 14th. I wish you all a wonderful day.